Welcome to month 7 of Cheshire Quilters Guild 2018 block of the month. This is block 12, Star of Hope. The other block this month is block 13, Broken Star, and you will find its video separately. So first thing we're going to do to make Star of Hope is we're going to make some half square triangles using the fabric A and C 5 by 10 rectangles, and the instructions details are in block 3, step 1, starting on page 8, which would be month 2's PDF. But the first thing, just a reminder, what we do to make multiple half square triangles is we're going to draw a line to split the rectangle in halves, and then we're going to draw the diagonal line from the corners to the bottom in a V. And what that will allow us to do, sorry for the glare, let me just do this real quick. We're going to stitch on both sides of the diagonal lines and then cut it apart on all 3 lines, and that'll give us 1, 2, 3, 4 half square triangles, which will trim to 4.5 inches. So I'll meet you back here when I have those done, and we'll see what we need to do for step 2. Okay, here's my 4 half square triangles. Now what we're going to do is we're going to trim off the dark corner, your fabric E corner, and I described 2 ways of doing that. One of them is to use the corner pop tool from Studio 180 Designs, and to use that we use the 2-inch cutaway corners right here. So I line up the 2-inch mark on the corner of my trimmed block and cut off the corner. The other way to do this is to measure out 1 5/8 from the seam and line up your ruler on the 1 5/8 mark on the seam, and 1 5/8 all the way along. That looks good. I'll shade the thing so you can see it a little better. So that's the 1 5/8 mark, and again I trim off the corner. These 2 pieces are going to be the same size, the pieces that I cut off. And after I cut the other ones, what you're going to do is you're going to take the 3 1/4 inch squares, and you're going to sew these on. They're oversized, but when we sew them on, we can use our standard 1/4 inch seam, and then we're going to press this seam in any direction. I'll probably just press it toward the triangle, toward fabric A again. Oh, I wanted to point that out. For these half square triangles, I press toward my fabric A, and that will help with the bulk in the seams when we finally assemble the block. So let me come back here when I've got my corner sewn on, and I'll show you how we trim that up. Now that we've got the triangle sewn on and pressed away, 2 choices for trimming it up. One of them is to use again the 2-inch line on the corner pop tool, and you line the 2. This is on the corner trim down. You put that right along the seam, and just like that, you've got perfectly trimmed modified half square triangle. The other, if you're using a standard ruler, this is a 4.5 inch unit, so you can just use the 4.5 inch lines on your ruler on 2 sides of your half square triangle unit, and again up one side, across the other. There's your finished modified half square triangle unit. So I'm going to finish up trimming those, and then we'll come back and see what the next thing is to do. Alright, the next thing we need to do is to sew together the triangles cut from the 5 1/4 inch squares we've got from fabric A and from fabric B, and sew them together with fabric A on the left hand side and B on the right. So you can just take your fabric B's and lay it on top of A's, and now it's all set to feed the straight edge, not the point, feed the straight edge and to sew these together. Once we do that, we're going to press to the darker side, which would be our fabric B in general. Alright, so here's my triangles sewn together, and again I press toward my fabric B, and now we're going to sew these to the fabric E triangles. Once these are sewn together, we're gonna trim this to be 4 1/2 inches. So the center point is going to be 2 1/4 inches from the sides to help you trim that. If you use a tucker trimmer, of course, that's much easier. So I'll be back when I have these stitched together. Okay, so here's my units finished with the seams pressed toward fabric E. We need to trim these to 4 1/2 inches. If you have a tucker trimmer, that's easily done by putting the 4 1/2 inch line across the long seam and the common diagonal along the other seam, and then you can trim two sides. There's just going to be a little bit, not going to trim off a lot, and then when you turn it around, you've got the two trimmed sides to put along the 4 1/2 dotted lines, common diagonal on the seam between your two triangles, the sizing diagonal 4 1/2 along the unit, and we can trim again. And so there we have a perfect unit. Now I'm going to trim another one, showing you how to use a regular ruler. If you're using a regular ruler with a 45-degree line in the corner, place the 45-degree line along the long edge, along the long seam rather, and then make sure your 4 1/2 mark touches on the seam between the triangles, because we want to make sure that seam also goes through the corners, and rotate it around and line it up again. And now the two trim sides go on the 4 1/2 inch lines on your ruler, the long seam on your 45 line, and you can trim off the other two sides. So I'm going to finish trimming these up, and I'll meet you back here and we'll see what's next. Okay, now we're ready to assemble our block. So the corner units are our modified half square triangles, and the middle pieces are our units we just made, finished in step 4. And so we can arrange them. The large triangles on the corner units are on the outside, and the fabric A piece is also on the outside with our other units. So the fabric E pieces, oh, that's not right. The fabric E pieces give us the 4-point star. You won't get the star if you don't put these units in the correct orientation. So again, make sure your fabric A is on the outside, and the large fabric A triangles are on the outside in your corners. And that's what our block is going to look like. So the way we're going to put it together is we're just going to stitch them together in rows of 3. And I would recommend that we press the seams toward, no, I recommend you press the seams open, mainly because of all the seams we're going to have in these places. So we're going to press the seams open as we sew these together in rows, and then when we stitch the rows together, you can press the seams in any direction, open or toward the center row. Those would be the two options I would recommend. So I'll come back here when I have Star of Hope finished. And there you have it, Star of Hope, which is block 12 of Cheshire Quilters Guild 2018 block of the month. It's the first of 2 blocks for July. And so find the other video for block 13, Broken Star. See you there.